Hey, I'm Andy Chanley from 88.5 FM. This is one of our Here at Home series of teleconference interviews, and I'm joined today by Jenn Wasner of Flock of Dimes and Y Oak. Howdy, Jen.
Hi there. How's it going?
It's going great. Too good to complain. The new album is called Head of Roses. It's out now on Sub Pop Records, and you've been hearing the single too every day for months now on 88.5 FM. First things first, happy birthday.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so kind
Your
of
birthday.
you.
As we're taping this, it was just a week or so ago. Did you do anything fun?
Yeah, actually, I had assembled a band to film some live streams that have yet to be announced. So I might be blowing up my own spot, um, but I was able to spend the week playing music with people, which is something that I really, really miss and don't get to do very much. And then we wrapped the night before my birthday, and then we had a pizza party, and it was really fun. So I got to hang out with actual human beings and play music. It was all I could have possibly hoped and dreamed for.
It's fantastic. That's the best way possible, doing something that makes you happy.
Yeah, I was very, very grateful for that.
So you're basically alluding to the fact that during the pandemic, there's a limit to what we can do to have fun. You recorded most of this album in the first month or two of the pandemic a year ago, right?
I did. Yeah, it's pretty strange. Many of the songs in this record had yet to be written this time last year. So they're yet less than a year old, which is wild I mean, that's very atypical for the typical, the time frame that it usually takes to get songs out into the world and in record form. So, yeah, it was a pretty quick process, start to finish, for sure.
It's interesting, though, that, I mean, we're talking about a month ago as all of this was new to now. And in the songs, it feels like you're dealing with some, at least it sounds to me like you're dealing with some pretty personal issues, even if it's not, quite evident, what they are. And if that is true, my question to you is this: do you feel that these songs are less relevant a year removed, or even more relevant in some odd way? How has it worked out for you?
I would say they're relevant in a different way and I'm glad that you asked, because I've been thinking about it a lot, and I've been thinking a lot about the framework of songwriting and how, it starts out as a process or like a framework for self-exploration or growth, personal growth. So this time last year, my experience with these songs, it was very self-centered. It was very me and my pain and my trauma, and trying to make sense of that and heal from that. And it was in many ways a successful process, in that, like, I find the act of creating things to be an incredibly healing one. And I learn a lot about myself through combining, intuition with the sort of like higher brain and like, and so it was, but it was very much about like me. And as the year has unfolded and as my relationship to these songs has changed, I've sort of been able to zoom out a little bit and understand that, like, we as human beings are a microcosm of the world at large, I think. And so what we learn about ourselves also applies in a broader form to others, or even to society as a whole. And so as I'm learning about myself, healing my own pain and trauma, and how difficult it can be to just sort of stop and slow down and sit with these like painful, uncomfortable truths. The truth that, like, it's impossible to be in relationship with others without causing pain to others. So it wasn't just about, oh, someone hurt me and I'm sad. It was like, someone hurt me and I'm sad, but also I know I've done that to another person. And I have to sit with the discomfort of that and acknowledge it in order to really like address the situation honestly. And I think that learning what that feels like, to really like sit with that discomfort and heal it, and like even when it doesn't feel good, even when there's shame and guilt involved, it sort of helps to go through the same thing when you're dealing with things on a broader scale. So like now I'm sort of thinking about the collective, and contending with my role in broader systems of harm. For example, like having to sit with the painful truth that, like, that like climate change is real, and it's something that we're going to have to change the way we live in the world, and that it affects people disproportionately based on class and privilege and race, or that systemic racism is real, and that although, you know, I abhor it, I also benefit from it as a white person. So like those things, those truths are like inherently like your body, like your nervous system like reacts. And you have to slow down to be able to sort of like channel that discomfort into something like acceptance, and to be able to like act from your highest self. And so I think that like making this record for me, in learning to do that on a personal level, has helped me to become better about learning to do that on a broader level. And that's a really long answer to your very first question. I'm so sorry.
That's a good answer.
Thank
you. I appreciate it.
you.
Yeah, love's messy, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're messy. We as human beings. I mean, and it's like we're a mess. We're all just trying our best out here. You know, it's like forgiveness and compassion is key, but we are a bunch of hot messes, to be sure.
Thinking about some of the songs on the album, like Price of Blue, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Second song on the record.
Mm-hmm.
It's these lovely harmonized melodies that are punctuated by this caustic electric, strident electric guitar feedback, and you kind of hear that again later in the album on Hard Way as well. If that's true, I guess here's my question: do you find these songs? To me, it seems like there's that humanity in it, that dichotomy of being able to feel two different ways at one time. Mm-hmm. And as that it came up a couple of times in this record, I'm wondering if that's a texture that appeals to you, and something that you've kind of a tone for the record that you've embraced.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's duality in all its forms is sort of like the most, or just non-binary thinking is one of the most authentic ways that I think music and sound and art can be received. My mom often jokes with me. She's just like, when are you going to write a happy song? And I'm like, well, they're all happy and they're all sad, because human beings don't feel one emotion at a time. You know, it's like, I think that's sort of a one-dimensional way of looking at art making. And so I think that like the truth of a song or an emotional experience for me is that it's multifaceted, and there's a lot going on in there. And so, you know, with Price of Blue or with Hard Way, there are these like beautiful, pristine, like pretty elements. And, you know, there is this sort of like, well, people don't feel one emotion at a time, you know, and that's not really like the most authentic way, I think, of representing a human experience, because it's all happening in there all at once. And so I do think, intuitively speaking, I am drawn to creating worlds that are more representative of what it feels like to inhabit that complex emotional space. And, you know, there's a lot of beautiful elements to this record, but there's also a lot of super intense, dissonant, caustic electric guitar, because nothing really sounds like anger quite like, you know, an electric guitar. I feel like you can conjure certain things with a guitar that you can't get with almost anything else. And so it has its place in the grand scheme of things.
Neil Young made a whole album,
a whole career. Yeah.
Yeah. Or Weld, I guess was what the name of that was. Let's see, 6 albums. We're talking to Jenn Wasner here. Come back after the break. 6 albums as Wye Oak, 3 releases now as Flock of Dimes. One was Dungeness 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. Wye Oak, is it an ongoing concern, or
I wouldn't say it's a concern, but it is an active project.
Okay, sure. It's good.
Yeah.
So let me ask this question then: how do you decide what material is more appropriate for Wye Oak versus what's more appropriate for a solo release? I'll say this: I'll say Flock of Dimes seems like a place where synthesizers, for example, might be, you know, more at home. But how does it, you know, frame up in your mind?
I mean, I think that was sort of like what a lot of people jump to at first, to try and be like, well, this is this and this and that. But like, honestly, I think that sonically speaking, at least at this moment, if you A/B the two projects, they're not entirely dissimilar. I have a lot of the same tendencies. I think it's sort of more of an emotional and intuitive choice. As far as like what goes where, the important thing for me is that I have discovered that I write a lot of stuff, and that cycle of creation doesn't really feel complete until I've shared it with others. And it can be a little frustrating for me. I'm very impatient. And so it can be a little frustrating for me to have to wait. You know, if you put out a record as one project, they don't generally like to see you put out another record 6 months later. But if I invent two different bands, I can kind of, you know, it's like a loophole. It's a cool loophole to be able to do more stuff.
You found a way to game the system. Good on you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Tell me about your first instrument.
Well, my first instrument was obviously my voice, as most people's, you know, often are. I did a lot of singing with my mom and with my close family members socially. You know, like we would get together and we would sing songs together and harmonize together. But later on, when I was probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old, I started taking piano lessons. And I loved playing the piano, but I hated practicing. And it wasn't until I started playing guitar that I started writing songs, and that came probably around like 12 or 13. I think the guitar is sort of like because it's a more malleable instrument. You know, you can change the tuning and you can kind of change the way it sounds. And it spoke to me a little bit more, like it felt a little bit more personal to me maybe. And that was how I kind of made that leap into, I can write songs. I don't just have to play other people's songs. But I'm really happy that I have the foundation I do with piano, because it is in many ways such an important, good framework for understanding the way music works.
I saw something neat that you did. It was on your Wikipedia page, actually, is where I learned about it. And if it's on there, you know it's true.
Yeah, I suppose. I haven't looked at it, so I can't say.
There's a picture on there of you performing at the Baltimore International Airport in the baggage claim area. And I'm thinking, as I saw that picture, oh my gosh, what a difficult place to assemble an audience, because by definition, this is a place for, people that they got places to be, you know, they got family that's meeting them there. They've got, work to get to and so forth. Incredibly difficult to do that. But also what an interesting, happening, what an interesting situation to put those two things together, a performing artist and commerce and travel all in one space. What was that like to you?
It's funny because people ask me about this a lot, and it's really weird to me. Like I did do it. It did happen. So there's a radio station in Baltimore that had this idea of having this concert series in the airport, and excuse me. And so, I was game to give it a try. And I think that I learned a lot from it. I wouldn't say that the experience itself was entirely pleasant, because you're right that it is a really hard place. Like I think in general, when I play shows, I tend to play for audiences that are there to see me and they know what they're there for. Whereas in that space, it's sort of just like, most people that encounter you are just like, why is she here?
Right.
And so it was interesting in a way of like, learning how to lean into myself and learning how to sort of lean into my natural ability to perform and entertain, even when the deck is stacked against me. But there were some really nice moments of connection, and then there were some really awful moments, and so for that, it was definitely like an interesting social experiment, but it's not something I'm necessarily like dying to get back.
Yeah, I thought it was terribly interesting, the setup. That said, I think most musicians, if you ask in the last year, they would have played a sewage treatment plant. If they,
yeah. I see the irony now of just being like, oh yeah, I guess I would take that show now.
All right. Speaking of that, what are the plans for 2021? When will we see you, playing in some limited capacity?
I really hope I get to play some shows. I really do. It's still unfolding. I think it will happen, but I think everyone's trying to be cautious about when and how, because it's no one really knows what is going on. So I'm really hopeful that I'll get to play some shows with my amazing band, but it just remains to be seen where and when those will be. I hope to be able to make some announcements about that. Like I said, I did get to shoot some really beautiful live stream performances that I can share in the meantime, but I'm really excited to share with folks. But yeah, otherwise I've had to learn how to be patient.
It's open, it's gradual, it's day by day. Each week that goes by, it's like, oh, we're doing that again, are we?
Yeah, but I have hope. And I am excited about that. And I feel like a good feeling about it moving forward.
Good. Well, last question. And I didn't completely stalk you on the internet, so maybe you
that's okay.
This, elsewhere ad infinitum. But I wonder if you tell me the name Flock of Dimes. In my mind, I go to like those names for groups of animals, like Murder of Crows and Convocation of Eagles.
Yeah, totally.
Where did the name come from?
It initially started where I just sort of liked the sound of it, but now I've come to think of it as in some ways, a life as a creative person is a life of assembling a large quantity of relatively meaningless objects. And so in some ways, a collection of a lot of relatively useless things
that come together to form
to create a body of work, hopefully, ideally. That wasn't the thought that I had in mind. It was just words that I liked together that sounded good together to me. But I like that meaning of it after the fact now.
Do you do that a lot? Do you see turns of phrase or hear things and say, and latch onto that? And I mean, that's a lot of people do that in a lot of different performance disciplines. George Carlin used to, be a master of taking, it's like, that sounds odd, and I'm gonna make a complete presentation out of it. Do you latch on to little things that you see in the TV guide that end up being constantly and obsessively? Yes, I have a running journal that never ends. So all those unfinished songs that are memos in your iPhone.
Oh yeah, so many. Gosh, it's endless. It's truly endless.
Well, it's a pleasure to get to know you a little bit. Jenn Wasner, once again, the album, go out and buy it. It's available now on Sub Pop Records. It's called Head of Roses. There's another term that I've never heard anywhere else.
There you go. I love those combinations, unexpected combinations of words.
We'll save that explanation for installment 2.
Yeah.
And speaking of 2, that's the name of the single that you can hear on 88.5 FM and hope to hear more. Jenn, when you get out to LA, come visit us in person.
I'd love to. I really hope that it's sooner rather than later. And thanks so much for playing my song. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, and good to meet you.
It's a pleasure to meet you too. Have a great day.
Jenn Wasner on 88.5 FM.
88.5 FM, KCSN, and KCSN HD1 Northridge, Los Angeles. KSBR and KSBR HD1 Mission Viejo. A service of California State University Northridge and Saddleback College. Member-supported public radio. Streaming on the web at 885fm.org.